Okay, hi, this is Elliot Fishman, and I'd like to welcome everybody to our Facebook Live, and hope everybody is doing well. And let me see, I'm trying to center myself here, doing poorly. Okay, there we go. And just hope everyone's doing well. And just a couple little announcements. One is, for the first time in a while, we now have over 2 million people visiting us monthly on Facebook. So I'd like to welcome everybody wherever you are. Number two, we started. I think some of you know that we started a conversation series Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. We did it in Clubhouse. The problem with Clubhouse is you need to be a member. You need to be invited to be a member. If you have it, you get 3 members to invite a week. But then you send a note to someone, but it looks like a weird note. It looks as if it looks like spam when you get it. So I don't think it's very successful. It's too painful. Twitter has started the same thing. So what happens is on Twitter, 8 o'clock, you go to CTisus. So you just have to like us. So you're in our club, in our Twitter thing, in our Twitter feed, and then you just go on. And actually, we don't type. Twitter is always typing. It's just like this. It's talking, but instead of me just talking, any one of you, any of the audience can talk. So you just raise your hand, and I give you the mic. We can have 10 people talking at the same time. We had over 20 people last night. You could see Lily marked it down. I think next week on Twitter, we're going to talk about this topic, which is how are you going to return to work, those of you who've been home post-COVID. So we're going to try that. I think it was successful yesterday. I think it's something new, and it's a way of us talking to you, with you. Obviously, me speaking to you now is wonderful. I get to hear myself talk. And if you have a question, I always encourage you to ask questions. So sometimes people don't have questions, or they have questions after the fact, or they don't want to write a question down. So the thing about the Twitter is that we can talk, and everyone has their opinion, and it should be a lot of fun. So I think it's something we're trying to do. We're going to see how well it works, and everything else. So that becomes important. The topic this week I thought I would speak about here, and again, this is really, I'm not going to tell you my opinion per se. I'm probably tell you more facts, but I really want your opinion. So here's what happens. Now, in terms of COVID being 15 months old, right? If you speak about radiology technologists, all the radiology technologists have been at work all the time. Okay, they have been the superheroes. They've been here 24/7 for the past 15 months. So we're not talking about them. They're here already. Nursing. Almost all the nurses, maybe there's some administrative people, but the nurses who do patient care have been here the entire time. We're very grateful to their hard work in radiology and outside of radiology. But we're not talking about them because they're here already. Nothing is going to change for them because they're already here. Radiologists, there's a question. Some of us have been here the whole time. People in CVDL, people doing interventional, people doing fluoro. We've always had some people here in CT, our people in ultrasound. Different areas had people here. Mammography, by definition, people were for the most part here. So there's a lot of variation, but a lot of people have worked from home. And maybe not over the last few months, maybe not every day from home, but maybe more than half the time or a significant portion of the time working from home. Now, in private practice, and we love private practice, but in private practice, some people have always worked from home, right? People have done teleradiology. That's their job. They work from home. Michelle Bean, who used to be here, was a fantastic radiologist, has been gone, I don't know, more than a decade. She's been in private practice doing teleradiology. So she's been doing that forever, okay? So for some people, this COVID didn't really change anything. For a lot of people, they're doing teleradiology for the first time in their life. When you speak to people, they like it. Some people don't like it. Some people hate it. I think people who have kids at home hate it. Your workstation at home may not be as fast, bandwidth, but it's pretty good. I mean, the good news is technologies have made it easy. It's not like this would have happened 15 years ago. We would have been dead in the water, or everyone would have been here. But the question then becomes, what about coming back to work? So I'm going to say, and also I won't get into this argument, I'm going to say that you can read films from home as fast as you can read them from here. Let's just make that assumption, okay? Though at home, your image quality is not as good in terms of your monitors. But let's not argue about that. Let's say you could do your reading at home. My question is, what about everything else? If you think about academics, there's basically three missions, right? And this is not in any special order. One is reading the films. We're doing excellent clinical care, okay? One is educating. We're teaching residents, we're teaching fellows, we're teaching each other, we're teaching referring clinicians. The third is the academics, writing articles, doing research. So again, we won't speak about reading the films. I think you can do it much better here, but nevertheless, you can do it from home. Okay, I won't argue about that. But what about teaching? If you're teaching residents or fellows, you could use Teams, you can use Zoom, you could do whatever you want. It's not the same. I don't know anyone, in diagnostic for sure, who says it's the same. All of us know the only way to really teach someone is being next to them, going over things in a very casual fashion. When you're using Teams or whatever else you're using, people, you kind of go over it very briefly, you pick out a few points, you don't quite chit chat, where you're just looking at this. Or if you're in the reading room and you have an interesting case, you're not going to go on Teams and say, oh, look at this case. You're really busy. But you might say to someone, hey, take a look at this case real fast. They come over and say, look at this interesting pancreatic tumor. Okay, that's it. 30 seconds, boom. Not making a whole big deal of things. So I think in order to do teaching, and we're discussing this within our own group, in June, essentially all of us will be back full time. But, how do we work? You sit next to the residents. How do you do, what's the best practice? Now, I think all of us are vaccinated, but you really don't know that, right? You can have new fellows, new residents, and there's no rule. You can't ask people if they're vaccinated. We're not working with a card yet, a vaccine card where you're walking around or carrying it around your neck like having a really nice green collar, which means you're vaccinated, or the equivalent of a passport. Now it's interesting, you do that if you go to a Yankee baseball game, but you don't do it if you go to a hospital. But I think most hospitals, remember Pfizer has already submitted for full-time approval, not just experimental approval for the drug. I think once the vaccines are full-time, I think Hopkins and every other institution is going to basically require the vaccine. We required the routine flu vaccine for everybody, so why would we not require this? Okay, so I think that's going to be a sure thing. It's going to be required. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everybody's going to require it. Okay, so that's pretty simple. So but in the short term, you don't know who has. So I'm not going to be sitting in the reading room, and you're not allowed to. You can't be sitting without a mask. Okay, so you need to be sitting next to someone, and what I would do is I wouldn't sit by their computer. I sit by my computer, have them look, and I would control the mouse. You don't want two people touching the mouse. You don't want to touch someone else's mouse. And those of us, as when you check, you can't let the other person drive. You want to drive. So I think you would have a person come over to you, sit to your side, both of you wear masks, go over the cases, and that's it. I think that's the way it really needs to go back to that. I think that's very important. We talk about things like conferences, multidisciplinary conference. We have not missed a multidisciplinary conference ever, but in saying that, the issue is I think most people aren't that satisfied. Pancreas, we've done them all, but the reality is we've only had, we have 15 to 20 people. We used to have 50 people, okay? We don't have quite as many people as we used to have. We also, it's not that same intensity. Because you do business as usual, it's a little bit hard when you're listening for someone to finish. When you're in person, you kind of know when they finish, so it's not quite as efficient. You don't quite have those conversations before and after because everyone comes in the room. There's no way to have private conversations. People do like private conversations. Many people will say that it's the side conversations that really lead to a lot of projects because you can say, hey, I have this idea, what do you think? Oh, let's get together and do it. Okay, so there are many things like that you can't really do within this scenario of Zoom or anything else like that. So I think to do education, I think to do research. Now, some research you can do remotely in the sense that we have we have a conference that I've run on CT for a decade. I would show interesting cases. I would show it typically on the PAC system. And I would go through 15, 20 cases at a time. I might call on someone or just people might pipe up what the things were. But it's hard. We cover different sites, um, moving around. It's very difficult during the day. So you might get 10 or 12 people, even with a free lunch, out of 20, let's say 21. When we do it now, we have like 35 people. We've expanded it to the fellows, so the fellows get some more learning. But from the faculty perspective, it makes it easy because all you have to do is go on Zoom. I'm showing the cases and I call on people. So this way the people discuss it. And I call on people. If you're a chest person, I'm not calling on you for a pancreas. If you're a pancreas person, I'm not showing you interstitial lung disease. So we kind of focus it a bit so you have really terrific discussions. I do it as a quiz. So people are, not so much that I want people to, you need to get the answer right. Sometimes it's impossible to get it right, but I want to show how people are thinking. And with our fellows online, the fellows really like the conference. Some residents show up, they like the conference. So again, it's something that within the process, we may not change because we would have less people attending if we do it in person. And showing the cases from my PowerPoint, it takes me 3 to 4 hours a week to get the cases together, but for everyone else, it's really an easy experience. So that's something, I think that will stay. We also have staff meetings. We used to meet once a month at 7:30 for about 35, 40 minutes in the hospital. We used to get, way back when, bagels. It was pleasant, but you might have 13 people show up because we have people, as I said, remote. People work the nights. You're not going to come in for a meeting, and if you're remote, you can't. But with Zoom, we have 20 people. We always get at least 18 at the meeting because even if you're on nights, even if you're at a different center, at the outpatient center, even if you're working from home, you just log on. You keep the camera off, and you could be sitting in your PJs or something. Whatever it is, I think some things actually work well in the new system. So I don't think everything's going to be a turn back the clock to February 2020. I think there's no turning back the clock. I think we will readjust things. I think we will be, you have to be coming back in person. I think as we spoke as a group yesterday, and we're going to work it out over the next 3 or 4 weeks, but our big thing is July 1st, new residents, new fellows. What is it we do? We want to have some consistency, so it's not like you do it one way and I do it another way and you do it a third way. That confuses the residents, the fellows, and is more apt to have error introduced into the system. I think we need a consensus amongst all of us how we do things. Now, if somebody's a great outlier, if someone has this paranoia about coming to work, I guess we can figure something out about them working more remotely, but I don't think we have anyone like that. So it's going to be challenging, but I think, it's this variation, it's this changing. And so my question is for you guys, and you can answer, a lot of people are online, what are you going to do? Are you going to come back? If you're a physician, if you're a radiologist, are you coming back into work now? If you're an academic institution, what are you doing to go back to quote unquote normal? Or is it just basically what's happened is a new normal? That this is the way things are going to be, we're not going to change things. That may be the answer to the question. Maybe you won't change going back. Maybe it is what it is, and as in many things, you have a black swan. Things change because you have to adjust, but you don't go back to what was. I don't think everything is going back to what was. I think we've learned more efficiencies and better ways of doing things, which we did because we were forced to do it. But to me, the question is going to be is which things are going to stay, which are going to go back to the way it was. There's no doubt going back to the way it is me going downstairs and buying coffee instead of making coffee. I do go downstairs and I get cereal or something, or I get soda or tuna sandwich. But normally I just get the coffee downstairs, but it was just too painful, so I get the coffee up here. So some things, I'm happy to get that, and I'm happy to go back and get coffee at the gas station when I stop there. It's a little tiny, squishy gas station, and the place inside is really small. But, those things are going to go back, but the question is what else? So if you want, you can put your opinion here. I see John from Bodies CT. As I mentioned, John's one of our senior techs, terrific. But the techs have been here. John's been here since, March, whenever everything changed, March a year ago. So I think the techs really, there's no change. I think it's doctors. I think it's administrators. At Hopkins, there's a plan to come back. The question is, do you bring everybody back, even if they want to come back? Should you not have everybody back so there's less crowds? Bathrooms, people congregating, cafeteria. The more people who are back, the more people who are around each other, the more the danger is. Now, the question is there going to be a danger? Is there some point where we could say, don't worry about it, you're not going to get COVID, or the chance is so small? The question, of course, is wearing a mask. All of us at Hopkins are required, I know you're required too, when you're inside to wear a mask. I mean, if you're in your own office, like right now I'm in my office by myself, I don't need to wear a mask. But if I go into the hall, go across the hall to get coffee, you got to wear a mask. You go to the cafeteria, you got to wear a mask. You go anywhere, you have to wear a mask. You're in the reading room, you're wearing a mask. So the question, of course, is then how do we do everything? When is it going to change? If you ask me, when are we not going to wear a mask? I wish I knew. I know it's at least a year from now. I just think places like hospitals, and it's not just Hopkins, I think all hospitals will be about the same. I think hospitals, rightly so, will err on the side of wearing a mask for too long, if the word is too long. I think we're vaccinated, but not everybody is vaccinated. You see the biggest challenge in the U.S. is people aren't getting vaccinated. I think Ohio, either Illinois or Ohio, announced today that they're going to have, they're going to have a lottery where if you get the vaccine, you get a lottery ticket, and they can give away $1 million prizes because they figure the only way to convince people to get a vaccine is not going to be telling them it's the right thing to do, it's the good thing to do. It's giving them a lottery ticket because now they can win a fortune of money. And so they can get the vaccine and a lottery ticket, and you can't get a lottery ticket, that's the way it is. Let me see, Francis Unger, where I live, they say if you walk down the street without a mask, the cops can fine you $50. What do you think about that? I think actually, Fauci and everyone else from CDC has said if you're walking outside and there's no people around, you don't need to wear a mask. I think that's CDC policy, that if you're on the outside and you could social distance, you don't need to wear a mask. So I don't know what state or city you're in, but the CDC has said that. I know rules are changing every day. At Hopkins, they announced that after 15 months, we're now allowed to travel. Till today, or till this week perhaps, you were not allowed to go to a meeting. Not that there were any meetings that you were going to go to anyway. First, you couldn't travel for pleasure. Then you could travel for pleasure, but be careful. But even in this Hopkins thing, which says you can travel for pleasure or for business, it still says, when you travel, hotels, planes, trains, buses are higher risk. So you need to be very careful. I think that probably is a really good set of advice for people. So let's see, I'm about running out of time here. So if anyone has any questions, next week, someone mentioned about, Mara Verdi mentioned about great cases, and yeah, you will see next, was it the third Thursday of the month or something, the Facebook Live is on cases. So I'll take cases that I show on Wednesday to my faculty, and I'll pull a bunch of those cases, probably roughly 10 cases, and show you, and we'll quiz you, and we'll see how well you do. So with that, if no one has any questions, it's a good, I think about it. Let me know, let us know. Come join us next Wednesday at 8 p.m. on twitter.com, and we can talk about how we are going back to normal. And I want your opinion. How long is it going to take to get back to normal? When are we going to be back to February 2020, where you didn't worry about wearing a mask, you didn't worry about getting in a crowded elevator, you didn't worry about anything? I don't know, we worried about a lot of things, but based on what we do now life was so simple. Now it's not so simple. So my question is, when are you not going to wear a mask? When are you going to feel comfortable doing everything, going to a medical meeting? When is everybody coming back to work for the people who weren't, or maybe they're not? Maybe that hybrid model is here to stay. Well, we'll see. But let us know, and hope to see you Thursday. And with that, have a great day.